Begin today the Gemara on Daf Mem Aleph Amud Beis, 2 lines up from the bottom of the Amud where it says Meisvei. So this Gemara continues the discussion from before. The Gemara brought the opinion of Rab Meir in a Mishnah in Menachos where it says that Chachamim say that pigul is only if you mefagel in the whole matter. If there are 2 components, to be matter, the carbon, to be makar on the mizbeach, or to eat from it, so you have to be mefagel in the entire matter, in the whole Aveda. Now, Rab Meir says, by a carbon mincha, where there are 2 components to be matered, that's the kaimitz and the levaina. So Rab Meir says, even if you are mefagel by one of them, it becomes pigul. Sounds like Rab Meir saying that even if you mefagel the machshava of pigul by a half a matter, it becomes pigul. So Rab Shimon ben Lakish came and was machadish and explained that no, that's not what Rab Meir is saying. What is Rab Meir saying? That you always go the machshava rishayna or the das rishayna that the person had. If in the beginning, when he started the Aveda, he had a machshava for pigul, so then what he does afterwards, al das rishayna is oisa, hu oisa. Therefore, it's going to be pigul if when he was makar the kaimitz first or the levaina first, he had the machshava of pigul. Whatever he followed afterwards, b'shtike, without a machshava, will be pigul. But Rab Meir agrees that it has to be pigul by the entire Aveda, by the whole matter. That was Rab Shimon ben Lakish's chiddush. The Gemara here is going to bring now a brayse to ask on Rish Lakish. Meisvei, so the brayse says, Bamed dvarim amurim. When do I say? So this is a brayse, and Rashi says what it's speaking about is, when do I say that just with one time, having the machshava of pigul, by one time that you're placing the blood on the mizbeach, that machshava of pigul will passel. It's only by the blood that you spray in the outside mizbeach, because as we learned before here in this Perek, since by the outside mizbeach the carbon is there, even just with one zrike, the kapara is done. So therefore the machshava of pigul there is considered to be a pigul in the entire Aveda. However, but when it comes to the blood that have to be placed on the inside mizbeach, and here the Brayse gives examples. There are 43 azayis that have to be done on Yom Kippur inside the Beis HaMikdash. How do you come to the number of 43? Because there's a par and a soir, a bull and a goat, that their bloods have to be brought inside. And what do you do with them? There are 3 or 4 different categories of what you do with the blood. Number 1, they has to be taken into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and it's sprayed achas l'maylo v'sheva l'mato, once above and 7 below, inside against the between and against the kapaitis, the aron. That has to be done with the dam and the par, with the dam of the par and the dam of the sire. So you have over there 16, and then you have to take both of them out, and the blood has to be sprayed against the paroiches achas l'maylo v'sheva l'mato for both of them. So that's another 16. So you're already at 32. And then besides that, now what you do is you take the blood from both the par and the soir and you mix it together, and now you have to place on the 4 corners of the mizbeach, and then 7 times on the top of the mizbeach. Tarish on mizbeach, right. So it comes out together, that's another 11, so that's 43 hazayis that are done inside. Or v'achad asar shel parkei Mashiach. There's 11 times that you spray with the parkei Mashiach. V'achad asar shel par helm dova shel tzibur, and also 11 times that is done with the par helm dova shel tzibur, because these 2 karbanos are sprayed 7 times achas l'maylo v'sheva l'mata, or no, not achas l'maylo v'sheva l'mata, 7 times. 7 times by the pareiches, and then 4 times on the 4 corners on the inside mizbeach. So that's 11 for both of these. Okay, so over here, by these karbanos that are brought inside, so pigul, if he had the machshava of pigul, bein b'rishayna, whether by the first category of the bloods that are sprayed inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, bein b'shniya, whether the second category, which is the bloods that are sprayed at the pareiches, or bein b'shlishis, or the third category, which is the bloods that are sprayed on the mizbeach. So he did not have the machshava of pigul by each one of the times that he's spraying the blood. Now they're all ma'akiv. As we learned before, the bloods that are brought inside, each time you place the blood or spray the blood is ma'akiv for the kapara, for the carbon to be kosher to take effect. So nevertheless, Rab Meir says, pigul v'chayav and all of kodesh, that it'll be pigul completely, and you chayav kodesh if you eat from it. However, Chachamim say, Ein by Kadis, there's no Kadis, Achim Fagel, B'chol Matter. Unless you have the Machshava of Pigul regarding the entire matter, which over here has to be all the bloods that are sprayed inside. This is the machlekes, the way it's quoted in this brayse. Says the Gemara, what do we see here? Katani miyeh, so we clearly see here in Rab Meir's opinion that he said, Pigul bein b'rishayna, whether you had the machshava of Pigul by the first category that's done in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, or bein b'shniya, or in the second phase, the second category against the Pareiches, or bein b'shlishis, the third category, which is on the Mizbeach. So it's all these cases, which means including a case where it wasn't the das rishayna. The machshava of Pigul wasn't the first Aveda. It was in the middle or even at the end, the third category. Upalig. And Rav Meir is arguing, and Rav Meir says that that's enough to make the whole thing Pigul. So here you see that the reason Rav Meir says it would be Pigul is not because of the svara that Ish Lakish says, that Rav Meir holds that you follow what's first, and therefore whatever followed comes behemshach to what he started with, so it's like he had the machshav of Pigul for everything. Here you clearly see that the machshav of Pigul in any part, even by a chatzi, by any phase, is enough to make the carbon Pigul. Not like the pshat of Rish Lakish. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Ovin, Hacham u'mayaskinon, what are we speaking about over here? Kagoin shepigul b'shchite dechad materho. That the machshava of Pigul that it says here, machshava b'rishayna, machshava b'shniya, machshava b'shlishis, we're talking about that there's a separate shchita happening. He's shechting a separate carbon for the first time, or the second time, or the third time. What does this mean? Because what happens if after you finish spraying the blood, the kain gadol, after you finish spraying the blood of the carbon inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, now the blood spilled. So you can't continue doing the Aveda in the other hazois that come afterwards. So what do? You have to shech the second carbon for the second category to spray against the pareiches. What's if after you spray the blood against the pareiches, again the blood spills? So now you're going to have to bring a third, you have to do a third shchita, and you start where you left off. You continue and you do the Aveda then to spray the bloods in the Mizbeach. So it could come out that you have three separate carbones of a par or a soir that's being shechted to spray in the Mizbeach. So in this Braisa, when it says Rishayna, Shniya, and Shlishis, it doesn't mean that it was the same par and he's doing the Aveda of all the different phases of the Zrike with one par. It's a separate shchit of each one of them. So if you have a separate machshava of Pigul by the shchita of the first, or the second, or the third, it's a machshava of Pigul by the shchita, by the entire shchita. That's not a machshava of a chatzi mater. That's a machshava of Pigul for the entire shchita of this par that you're shechting now. So whether it's the first, second, or third, Rav Meir is saying it's going to be Pigul. Why not? It's a full-fledged machshava of Pigul regarding the whole shchita. That's what Rav Meir is trying to say. By the first, or the second, or the third par that's being shechted there. So that's the pshat. So there's no question on Ish Lakish's pshat and Rav Meir's opinion. But the Gemara asks, if that's the case, Ihachi, my time of the Rabbanan. So why are Rabbanan arguing with this? Rabbanan say that it's not going to be Pigul until Yefagel b'chol amata. What do you mean b'chol amata? Each par is a separate shchita, and he's having a machshava of Pigul for each shchita separately. So, or for one of the shchitas separately, that's a full Pigul for that shchita. Why should the Pigul not take effect? So Rav explains the teretz of Rav Yitzchak bar Ovin that man chachamim, when it says here in this brayse chachamim disagree, it's Rabbi Lazari. Rabbi Lazar is the one that disagrees. Where do we see this? Because the Tanan, there's a Mishnah in Menachos that says hakaimetz va'alavayna va'akteires. So these are the list that the Mishnah is saying here are all different kinds of things that are supposed to be burnt entirely on the Mizbeach. The kaimitz, the fistful that you take from the mincha, and also the frankincense or the ketaydes, that has to be burnt completely on the inside Mizbeach. Or minchas kayanim, the mincha that the kayanim bring, also is burnt completely. Or kayim Mashiach, the mincha that the kayin gadol brings. Or minchas nesachim, the menachas that comes with the nesachim. So it's all burnt completely on the Mizbeach. Now, what happens if shehikriv me'achas mehen kezayis pachutz? He took only a kezayis of one of these, and he was makriv it outside the Beis HaMikdash, which is the Isser of Shchutei Chutz. You do any Aveda that qualifies to be done inside, and you do outside the Beis HaMikdash, you chayav kares. But over here, he didn't take the entirety of the Kaimitz or the Levaina or the continuation of the list and bring it and burn it outside. He only took a kazayis of it and he burnt it outside. Chayiv, he'll be chayiv for this. Why? Because even though the full kapara, the completion of this aveda here is when you burn it fully, but even a kazayis is also an aveda. When you burn it inside, if you burn a kazayis at a time, each kazayis is considered to be a significant portion of the aveda. And let's say you burnt it all, but there was only a kazayis left. When you burn that kazayis at the end, the kazayis completes it. So a kazayis is significant to be chayiv if you burn it outside for shchutei chutz. However, Rabbi Elazar says you're going to be poter sheyakriv es kulam. In order to be chayiv for shechting outside, and in this case doing an aveda outside, you have to do the complete aveda outside. What completes the entire kapara, not just the kazayis. Kazayis is takan aveda, but according to Rabbi Elazar, that's not enough. It has to be the complete aveda that completes the whole kapara that's done outside. So since the whole list there, they have to be burnt entirely to affect the shleimus of the kapara of this carbon or of this akrove. So only if you bring the whole thing outside, then you're going to be chayiv. So what's the Gemara bringing a rai from that Mishnah? Just like the halacha, Rabbi Elazar said this regarding shchutei chutz, it's the same also regarding the halacha of pigul. According to Rabbi Elazar, pigul will not take effect unless you have the machshava of pigul for the entire thing that brings the kapara, not just for one aveda. So therefore over here, even though we're talking about three different shchitas that are happening, because the blood spilled and you're shechting once, another time, a third time, so seemingly the pigul for each shchita separately should be a full-fledged pigul. But the answer is not according to Rabbi Elazar. Why? Because you're shechting each par to do only a portion of the hazois of the blood. It spilled, so now you have to shecht another par to do another portion. And then it spilled again, and you're shechting a third par to do another portion. So it comes out that each par that you're shechting is only for a portion of the aveda. It's not for the entirety of the kapara of the blood. So therefore, according to Rabbi Elazar, when this happens and you're bringing three separate shchitas to shecht in order to spray the blood, different portions of the different phases of the blood, the machshava of pigul by each one of the shchitas separately will not cause it to be pigul. The Gemara, how could you say that what Rabbi Elazar says there in that Mishnah of Menachos, and we're comparing it just like shchutei chutz, it applies to pigul as well, but how could you say that it applies over here to what we're talking about regarding the shchita of this par 3 times? But for Rav said, that Rabbi Elazar will agree when it comes to blood that it's sprayed on the mizbeach, that pigul will take effect, or shchutei chutz. First, let's talk about shchutei chutz, that if you're shechting outside of the Beis HaMikdash, even regarding the hazos of dam, even if you sprayed dam outside the Beis HaMikdash only once, which is not the completion of the kapara, but even spraying just once regarding blood, Rabbi Elazar is maida that it will become pigul. In other words, what the Gemara here is going to prove now is this mission that you just quoted from Menachos is speaking about different cases when it comes to burning on the mizbeach, the kaimetz, the levaina, the ketairas, all these things that have to be burnt on the mizbeach in their entirety. Over there, in order to be chayiv for shchutei chutz, it's only if you burnt the entirety outside the Beis HaMikdash. But regarding spraying blood, over here, even if just one was sprayed, you're over on the Esau of shchutei chutz. Where we see this, because the Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah in Yuma. So over here, it's also talking about this kind of a case where the blood spills on the middle of the Aveda. It has to be sprayed inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, then by the Paroiches, then on the Mizbeach, and the blood sprays in between. So there, in that Mishnah, there's actually a machlokes. The Tanakama there says, what happens if in middle of the blood that you're spraying inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you didn't complete Achas Lamayla V'Shev Lamati. You did 4 or 5 of them, let's say. And in the middle, it spilled out. So the Tanakama there says, you have to start over from the beginning. You have to shecht another par, start over from the beginning, because it spilled in the middle. But now, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon argue on this. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon Aimrim, Mimakayim Shapasak, Mishamu Maschel. That if it's spilled in middle of spraying inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, or the same in the later phases, if it's sprayed in middle of, if it's spilled, that is, in middle of spraying at the Paroiches, so what do? You have to shecht another par, and you start from where you left off. You don't have to start over that phase that you're holding by again. Start exactly from where you left off.
So how do you
What
know
do you?
it's
What?
done?
1 second. So what do you see from this point? That according to Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon, every zrika, every individual zrika of the dam within each one of the categories is counted separately. Exactly where it's spilled, that's where you start again. So we consider significant every individual zrika to be complete in its own right. Once it's done, it's done. And if it's spilled after that, you never have to do it over again. You start exactly where you completed it. So from this we learn out that Rabbi Lazar definitely holds that if that's the case, that if I see here that when you do Daveda inside the Beis HaMikdash, whatever is done individually. It doesn't have to be the full category, the full phase here. So if you do that Zrika outside the Beis HaMikdash, even just 1, 2, you're over on the Isra of Shchuti Chutz. So before we were comparing these 2 points, if I see that you're over on Shchuti Chutz, even with just 1 hazah, so the same applies to pigul. Then it'll be pigul if you have the machshava of pigul for just 1 hazah of the dam. You don't have to have the entirety of the whole hazah of the dam that completes the kapara to be over on Shchuti Chutz or to be over on the Isra of pigul. So what the Gemara is asking is, if so, how could we say the pshat that we said before, that he's shechting 3 different parim? Why? Because it's spilled in between, and therefore, according to Rabbi Lazar, it's not going to be pigul when you have the shchita of 1 par, a shchita of another par, and a shchita of a 3rd par. Why? Because the shchita of each par is only for 1 phase of the spraying of the blood. It's not the shleimus. It's not the shchita of each par doesn't include the whole shleimus of the kapara. But it doesn't matter. According to Rabbi Lazar, each individual zrika, when it comes to the dam, each individual zrika is significant. Actually, even more than the Tanakama. Tanakama says we divide it in 3 phases. Rabbi Lazar says wherever you stop and you shecht again, you just continue from right there. If so, the shchita as well, if you have the machshava of pigul by that shchita, in order to continue from where it's spilled, from where you're holding, the machshava of pigul should be a significant machshava of pigul to passel. So how can we say that this is the pshat and the opinion of the Chachamim before? So therefore the Gemara switches, gives a different answer completely in the pshat of that braisa in order to defend the Shlokish's opinion. So Elo Amar Rave, so therefore Rave says the pshat of here is, when it said, what was the lashon of the braisa? That he was mefagel, bein b'rishayna, bein b'shniya, and bein b'shlishis. That was the lashon. So now Rav explains as follows: Kogoin, what it means is shepigel b'rishayna. He had the machshava of pigul when he began spraying the blood in the 1st phase, which is inside the kodesh HaKadoshim. Then v'shasek b'shniya, the 2nd phase, which is against the pereiches. There he didn't have any machshava of pigul. But then v'chazar upigul b'shlishis. And then he had the machshava of pigul by the 3rd phase, which is spraying on the mizbeach. That's what the Braisa is speaking about. And what's this Braisa saying? That according to Rab Meir, it's going to be pigul. Why? Because according to Rab Meir, like Rish Lakish explained, Rab Meir's opinion, that what determines if it would be pigul, if the Machdas Rishayna, the 1st phase was with pigul, then the continuation is pigul as well. That's why Rab Meir is saying here that it's going to be pigul. So the pshat in the Braisa is not like we thought before, that it's 3 separate cases. Or he had the machshava in the 1st phase, or in the 2nd phase, or in the 3rd phase. No. He had the machshava of pigul by the 1st and the 3rd and the middle phase, which is against the pereiches. There he didn't have the machshava of pigul, but as long as the das rishayna, the 1st phase was pigul, it takes effect. Now the Gemara explains why are we adding here the point that he also had the machshava of pigul by the 3rd phase. There must be a chiddush in this. That's how he's explaining the lashon of the Braisa. It says shlishis. So what's the chiddush in this? Because ma'at the time, I would think to say the following svara. If you're going to say that the way it works is whatever the person was thinking when he started the avodah of spraying the blood, so then whatever continues always goes back to that first machshava. So piguli b'shlishis lomali. Why was it necessary for this kayin to think the machshava of pigul the 3rd time? If he's thinking the machshava of pigul the 1st and the 3rd time, but in the middle phase of spraying against the pareches, he doesn't think pigul, shouldn't that itself be an indication that he only wants to have the machshava of pigul by the 1st and 3rd time and not by the middle? So then it's not a machshava of pigul by the whole matter, by the whole entire avodah of zrika. That's what I would think. Kamash Malan, that's the chiddush here in this Braisa, that this concept that Rish Lakish explains in Rab Meir, that the Das Rishayna establishes that the whole continuation is pigul, that's even if he had the machshava of pigul by the 3rd phase, but nevertheless, what he had in the beginning does continue throughout. We still apply this point of Aldas Rishayna that it continues throughout, and we don't consider the fact that he had the machshava in the end to be enough of a proof that he dafke meant not to have the machshava of pigul for the middle phase. That's the pshat in this brayse. Maskefla Ravashi, as Ravashi asks on this pshat, but it doesn't fit into the words of the brayse. Midi shasa ketani. Does the brayse say such a lashon? Which means even if, that applied brayse actually uses the lashon bein b'rishayna, bein b'shniya, bein b'shlishis. The Gemara is soon going to ask on this lashon of bein. But even if I'm going to ignore now that term of bein, but this to say that in the middle one he did not think pigul. The first and the third, but not the middle one. That for sure you don't see in the lashon of the brayse. It doesn't say shasak that for the middle phase he didn't think the machshava of pigul. So Elo Amar Ravashi. So therefore Ravashi says Hocha b'mayas kinon. The pshat here in this brayse is kagon shepigul b'rishayna b'shniya u b'shlishis, that he actually had the machshava of pigul by the first, second, and third phase, all by machshava of pigul by everything, by the entire avodah that he did here. So now so he had the machshava of pigul by everything. So for sure it should be pigul. What's missing? Why would the Chachamim argue in this? So over here, the thing is, as Rashi explains, and Taisus explains, there's actually a fourth phase. You could divide it to a fourth phase. Why? Because when you spray, according to Rashi, when you spray the blood on the inside Mizbeach, there's two parts. There's spraying on the four corners, and then there's spraying on the top of the Mizbeach 7 times. Okay, so when it says here that he had the machshava of pigul first, second, and third time, it means inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, then when he's spraying against the Pereiches, and then when he's spraying on the four corners of the Mizbeach. But then when it comes to spraying on the top of the Mizbeach, there he didn't have the machshava of pigul. So Rav Meir says it's pigul, because in the first 3 phases he had the machshava of pigul, so al das rishayna, whatever continues afterwards, which is the final phase, to spray on the roof of the Mizbeach, is also pigul. Chachamim say he's missing a pigul here, because everything is ma'akiv. It's all one big kapara. He's missing the last step to have the machshava of pigul. It won't be pigul. That's the pshat here. Taisus says the same pshat like Rashi with one small change. The fourth phase is not the spraying on the roof of the mizbeach. It's the shirayim of the blood that you spray on the mizbeach achitzin, or you pour in the mizbeach achitzin, which according to one opinion, as the Gemara will quote here again later, according to one opinion, even the shirayim of the dam by Yom Kippur is ma'akiv, and that's the fourth phase that he did not have the machshava of pigul. Okay, so now the Gemara explains what's the chiddush and what Rab Meir is saying here. If the point of what Rab Meir is saying is you go by the first das, so then why is it saying that he had that machshava the first, second, and third phase? What's if he would have the machshava by the first phase and not the remaining phases? The same din would apply. What's the chiddush of first, second, and third that the pigul takes effect even though he didn't think that machshava of pigul by the fourth phase? So the Gemara explains, Rabashi explains, because I would think to say, if I would want to apply over here this concept, that the das that the person has at the beginning, everything that follows goes with that mindset. So why is he thinking the machshava of pigul by the second phase, by the third phase? It's all following the machshava that he had in the beginning. It's not necessary to think again and again. Now it's interesting here, Rashi actually spells out that the machshava of pigul is not just a machshava. He says the pigul with his mouth. He says it verbally. So this is part of the big chiddush over here. He's saying by the first, second, and third phase of this spraying of the blood, the Kayin is clearly saying that he's doing it with the machshava of pigul, that he's doing it almanas to eat or be makter out of its time. Then by the fourth phase, he's quiet. So there's a very strong svara to say that he does not want the fourth phase to be done with pigul. So I can't apply this concept that the mindset it begins with, it should continue throughout. So therefore, Kamash Malon, that's the chiddush of Rab Meir, that nevertheless, it's not enough of a proof that he doesn't want the pigul to be by the fourth stage, and it does apply there, it does become pigul.
So the Kamash Malon of Rab Meir is that if you have the first phase pigul, it goes through
always. Even if he thought befedish for 3 out of the 4 phases, only 3 out of the 4, it still continues for the fourth phase. Okay, but now the Gemara asks the question that I implied before. It still doesn't fit into the words of the Braise, because Vaha Bain Katani, the Braise, when it speaks about the pigul here, first, second, and third phase, it doesn't say by all of them. It says Bain B'Rishayna, Bain B'Shniya, Bain B'Shlishis, which is mashma that he had the machshava of pigul by either or, not by all 3. So that will still be a question on Rish Lakish's opinion. You see here, Meir says that even if he thinks a machshava of pigul by the second or third stage, So the beginning was not with the machshava of pigul, but by any stage he thinks the machshava of pigul, it'll become pigul. So it sounds like Rab Meir is saying that mefaglin b'chatzi mater, that whatever stage you're thinking pigul, that makes the whole thing pigul. Kashya, that lashon of the Braisa still remains a question. But the Gemara does not consider this lashon to be a refutation. It says kashya. The Gemara will continue with the questions on Ish Lakish. So you see, the Gemara does not consider it to be tuyufta.
What you can say, side this,
Yeah,
side this.
right, it's not, yeah, okay. So it's only a lashon. It's, you could be matchik the lashon. It's not. Okay, so now the Gemara goes back to this din over here that Rab Meir says in this case, and the Gemara will discuss the understanding of what Rab Meir is saying here, according to the ones that disagree with Rish Lakish. According to the ones that say that the whole point of Rab Meir here is to say mefaglin b'chatzi mater. You have a machshava of pigul in, let's say, the first phase or the second, it makes everything else pigul, even though you didn't have a machshava of pigul for everything. So now the Gemara will explain how that works. Oh, mamar, so the master has said, Rab Meir says pigul v'chayav in all of kodesh. That if you had a machshava of pigul only by one phase, it becomes pigul and you chayav kodesh for this. Says the Gemara, Mechdi, let's see, kodesh, we have the following rule regarding pigul, that kodesh like mechayiv, there's no kodesh, there's no status of pigul on the carbon that you should be chayav kodesh for this, at sheyikrivu kol matirov, unless the remaining, everything else of the carbon was done fully kosher and right. And the only problem here was exclusively this, that it was pigul, but everything else, you were makriv, you completed bringing the carbon until the end properly. Then, if you eat from this basar, you chayav kares. Because we learned this out, we brought it before already, kartzas kosher, kachatzaras pasal. That we learn out in the pasik that just like when you have to complete the aveda and you spray, you do everything in order for it to be kosher, so too, in order for the status of pigul to take effect, to be chayav kares, if you eat from it, so hartzah's pasal as well, it has to be completed. Hartzah's kosher shikrivu kol matira. In order for something to be kosher and then to be able to eat from it, there has to be everything completed properly. Hartzah's pasal. So too for the pigul, shikrivu kol matira. Everything has to be completed properly. Okay, so now the question over here is, the way this opinion is explaining what Rab Meir said, that Rab Meir is saying this concept of mefaglin b'chatzi mater, which would mean the first phase of the zrika of the dam was done with pigul, the other two phases were not, and still it becomes pigul. So the question is though, but how could it become pigul? Because now, kiv in the choshev beibifnim, psula, once he had the machshava of pigul for the first phase of this blood, that's brought inside in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and Kayin had machshava of pigul over there, that passes the whole thing. It passes the carbon. So now if so, keman deloy adi dami. So it's as if the blood inside was not sprayed, because he did it with a machshava that passes the carbon. If so, ki hoder madi beheichal, when he comes out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim and he wants to continue doing the avodah with this carbon and now spraying the blood at the Pereiches or on the Mizbeach, stage 2 or stage 3, so Maya Ba'almo Hudukadi. All he's doing now, it's like water. It's not blood of a kosher carbon anymore, because he already had the machshava of pigul in the first stage, so it passes everything else that follows afterwards, so it shouldn't be pigul. So how could he say this concept of mefagla b'chatzi mater that it would become pigul? That's the question of the Gemara. So Rashi here, is a long Rashi, clarifies the pshat in this question, because seemingly you could ask this question by any pigul. Let's say a person thinks the machshava, the kohen thinks the machshava of pigul by the shchita, and then he completes all the other stages of the aveda until the end. But once you had the machshava of pigul by the shchita, so all the other stages that you do until the end is already puzzle. So you're never completing the carbon until the end in a kosher way. So how does pigul ever take effect? So what's the Gemara asking over here? Because you had the machshava of pigul in the beginning, it passes the carbon. So then whatever you spray afterwards is like water. You're not doing anything because the carbon is already puzzle. So it won't be pigul. So how is it ever pigul? How do you ever have the concept of pigul if this svara is true? So Rashi explains, no, this is only a question specifically regarding this, when you have a whole group of hazois, different hazois, and you thought the machshava of pigul by only a portion of it. Only here's the question. Why? When you get to shchita, this is the original din of pigul that the Torah says, that if you shecht with the machshava of pigul. So then the entire continuation of the Aveda that's done properly and right, so those are other Avedas. That's not the Shechita. The Shechita was done with pigul. Then all the other continuations of the Aveda that are done afterwards, without the machshava of pigul, so you're doing it sort of bekashrus, it then makes this behemoth qualified that the status of pigul should take effect. That's the halacha of pigul. Or if you're going to say that the machshava of pigul is by the entire zrika, by every stage of the zrika, okay, so you did pigul for the entire zrika, so of course it passels it. But when you have the machshava for the entire zrika, so then I say the machshava of pigul takes effect, and you completed the whole aveda with this machshava of pigul, and it's pigul. But over here, the Gemara at this point, the Makshan over here, holds that in this case where you have the Hazah, the Zrikis, inside the Beis HaMikdash that has different phases, and you're only thinking the Machshava of Pigul by one phase and not by another phase. Over here, the Gemara says, how's the Pigul going to take effect? You can't say that he did a Pigul on everything, on all the Hazahs, where the halacha of Pigul should take effect on everything. You can't say also that it's like the shechita, where the shechita is one thing, and then there's the continuation of the avedis, which are other things. It's within the azah itself. He's splitting up the azah. Half of the azah he did with pigul, and the other half he didn't. In such a case, the Gemara is asking that it passes the hazah now becomes like water. Once you had the machshava of pigul for half, it becomes like water, and then the continuation of the azah are worthless, so you can't consider it to be a completion of the carbon properly, that the pigul should take effect, that the status of pigul should take effect. That's the pshat in the question of the Gemara here. So Bekitzer, it's asking on this whole concept. So the Gemara answer is Omar Rabbe. So Rabbe says, if we'll accept this so Rabbe accepts this concept that the Makshan is asking, so therefore he says, you're right, Mishkach Haslo, the only time and the only way, according to this opinion, that pigul will take effect is Barba Parim or Bedalat Sirin, in a case where the blood spills in between each phase of the blood that's being sprayed over here. So there's, as we saw before, there's 4 different phases. There's in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, there's by the Peroiches, then there's on the Mizbeach, HaPnimi, and the 2 phases there, according to Rashi, which is in the corners, and then on the top of the Mizbeach. And between each phase, another carbon is being shechted. Another par is being shechted to complete because the blood spilled in between. So over here, if that's the case, over here you could say that if he's shechting a new par, and by the shechita of this new par, he has a machshava of pigul, or by the azos of this par, he has a machshava of pigul, that's considered to be that he completed this par for its avedis fully to be pigul. And you can't argue and say, well, but there's other parts that are not completing the hakrava of this par. No, but regarding what you're doing for this par, you did complete. Because there's 4 different parim over here that the person, that the kohen is shechting. So what you did with this one is completed. So it's in such a case that Rab Meir is saying, mefaglim b'chatzi mater. It's still considered to be chatzi mater because the kapara, the full kapara of the par includes all the zikis. From all the four phases. That's what completes the kapara. But the way this kohen is doing it, though, is divided into 4 separate shchitas of 4 separate parim. So therefore, on one hand, I say that it's chatzi mater. Each par is only doing a portion of the mater. You need everything together to make the kapara. But on the other hand, you can't ask a question that I didn't complete the aveda of this par fully. Each par is separately. I shechted this par, and then I sprayed the blood with this one, its phase, and then it got interrupted, and I continue, and I do the other part, and I complete it with the other part, and I complete it with the third part. So you completed everything. The second part completed what the first one was missing, the third completed what the second was missing, and the fourth completed what the third was missing. So in the end, they completed each other. But because it's divided into 4 separate parim, I could say that what you did with each one is considered to be completed. Each one completes its stage, its percent, and then together it completes all together to become pigul. That's the only way Meir would say mefaglim b'chatzi mater. That's the way Rabbi is explaining this.
I said only the last one's going to be pigul because the other ones the blood spilled and once you have in the end the last ones that are completing, they complete the first one. They go back, they complete each other. So the last one, when you complete in the end, it completes. You can't use the 3 kabbanas because the blood spilled. It's not like
you only take off from where you left off. You with the first one he sprayed inside.
then it's spilled, then he brings the second one, then it's spilled, then he brings the third one. So he's bringing it, so each one is being mashlim each other.
So the psul is out pigel or because the blood spilled?
Pigel. No, but
first
it's even
three,
more. It's incomplete.
bring it
but it
because-
becomes pigel though. After you complete bringing
Last
all
one.
the last one, then it becomes pigel because you completed the whole aveda, but you did each phase separately, so therefore it becomes pigel.
Each one is an integral part of all four of them.
Yeah.
And so it's going to become piggle. You can't
Correct.
say this is separate, this is separate. It's all
Correct. It combines together.
combines together.
Okay, this is all one approach, but now Rava says he disagrees with the whole basis of the question here. Even if it's just one bull that's being brought or one goat that's being brought, it's not divided this way. You can't ask over here that when you divide all the bloods that have to be sprayed, and the first part was done with piggle, so then the second parts of the blood that are sprayed is like water. And therefore you can't consider it to be completed, the Aveda properly, for the piggle to take effect. Rava says no, just like you say, regarding the Shechita, that if you had the machshava of piggle for Shechita, so even though it passes the carbon, but nevertheless when you continue and complete the Aveda, the piggle takes effect on this animal. The same is within the Hazaz itself, when you did part of the Hazaz with a machshava of piggle and the other parts not, but whatever you completed will be the completion for the piggle to take effect. He doesn't hold to this chiluk that I explained before that Rashi says. He says, no, lepigulim eratze. Whatever chatzi mati, you had the machshava pigul for this blood, everything else that's completed afterwards is going to help the status of pigul take effect properly. Okay. Now the Gemara goes back to a detail that what was mentioned before in the Lashon of the Braise, beginning of the previous Amud Aleph, where it said, Arba'im v'shalish, that when you have the par and the soir on Yom Kippur that is brought into the Beis HaMikdash, so it's a total of 43 times that you're spraying the blood. So the Gemara asks, but Vatanya in a different price we learned Arba'im v'sheva, that it's 47. And says the Gemara, Ha kamandama ma'arvin l'kronos. There's a machlekes about this, and Rashi here brings the machlekes is between Rabbi Yonason and Rabbi Yoshia in the Gemara in Yuma. So it's machlekes whether you mix the bloods of the par and the soir when you place them on the corners of the mizbeach. So one is kamandama that you do mix it, and the other is according to the opinion that you don't mix it. Right? So if you mix the blood, the cheshbon that we had before 43 is because after you finish with the hazaz, phase 1 in the kodesh hakadoshim, phase 2 against the pareches. Now once you come to the mizbeach hapnimi, you take from the par and the soir together, you mix them together, and you place them in the four corners and on the top of the roof of the mizbeach 7 times. But one opinion is, no, you only mix it after you place it, after you put it on the four corners, and you're going to spray it on the roof. So you have another 4 times. So therefore it goes from 43 to 48.
47.
Or 47, correct. Okay, but now the Gemara asks, but Vatanya, there's another brayso where it says, Arboe mushmoina. It is actually 48 times that you're spraying the blood. So where's an additional time? And says the Gemara, Commando Omar, this 48th time is like the opinion that we had mentioned earlier here as well, that Shirayim Akvin, I mentioned it before, that even the leftovers of the blood that you spray that or you pour in the outside Mizbeach, that also is Ma'akiv, the whole kapara of this carbon. We had this before. This is a machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yehuda. V'chila, mechaper. Rabbi Yehuda says you have to do everything, including the shirayim, and therefore it's 48. Ha kamanda Omar, but then the Rabbi Akiva's opinion is ein shirayim ma'akvin. The shirayim is not ma'akiv, so therefore it's only 47. Okay, Meisvei. The Gemara is going back to the opinion of Rish Lakish. Again, the point Rish Lakish said is that according to Rab Meir, when you have the first machshava of pigul, then I could say that what continues in the Aveda after that, al das rishayna, it'll be pigul. But Rab Meir does not hold of a concept of chatzi matir, that if you add a machshava of pigul by half, by a portion, then it would become pigul. So the Gemara asks, it says in the Braise, B'med dvarim amurim, that when do I say? It says a Braise Menachis speaking about the pigul by a carbon mincha, and you have the machshava of pigul by one stage of what you're doing. So when do I say that this pigul by one stage? B'kemitze, regarding the kemitze. So if just the act of the kemitze itself, when you take the fistful, you add machshava of pigul, that makes it pigul. Or b'matan keli, when you then take that fistful and put it into another klisharis, or behiluch, when you're walking with it to the mizbeach. So over here, with one act, machshava of pigul there will make the whole carbon pigul. But then when you come to burn the mincha on the mizbeach, so when you burn the mincha on the mizbeach, there's 2 parts that have to be burnt on the mizbeach: the kemitze
and also the levina, the frankincense. So over here, if he put the kaimitz, he put it onto the mizbech to be burnt with the machshava of pigel. But then the levina, he did not have the machshava of pigel, or the opposite. He put the kaimitz on the mizbech with no machshava of pigel, and then afterwards, and when he put the levina on the mizbech, there he had the machshava of pigel. So he only had a machshava of pigel by half of this matter. This Aveda includes two parts, and you only had half. Rav Meir pigel. Rav Meir says it's still going to be pigel v'chayav and all of kares, and you are chayav kares for this. It's not going to be kares unless you have the machshava of pigel by the entire matter. So here it seems to be clearly not like what Rish Lakish explained in Rav Meir's opinion, because katani miyah, it says here in this brayso when it says the example that Rav Meir says it is going to be pigel, that esakaymitz b'shtika. If first he was makte the ketayres, not the ketayres, sorry, the kaimitz without a machshava of pigel, and vesalavayna b'machshava, and afterwards when he's putting the lavayna on the mizbech, then he has the machshava of pigel. So you can't say the svar of das rishayna, that the first machshava was pigel. No, the first machshava was b'shtika. Only half was pigel. Upalig, and Rav Meir argues on this case. So I see the svara of Rav Meir is not das rishayna, that we go by what's first. And then we could say that the machshava of pigel first continues later. So that says the Gemara, Eime, you have to read over here in this lashon of the Braise, kvar nosan asalavayna b'machshava. That he already had before placed the levina of the masbech with the machshava of pigel, right? So you look into the lashon of the Braise, it says nosan asakaymitz machshava v'salavayna b'shtike, oisha nosan asakaymitz b'shtike v'esalavayna b'machshava. So when it says ve'esel levina machshava, and he already placed the levina before, that's what it means to say, but not that it was afterwards. Right? So in other words, the Braisa is not being medayik in the seder. It means to say if you had the machshava of pigel either by the kaimitz or by the levina, whichever one was first, that will establish that the whole continuation will be pigel, like Rish Lakish's explanation of Rav Meir's opinion. So the Gemara doesn't accept this pshat. Chode, number one, if so, the Hainu Reisha. So that would mean, or the Hainu Kamaisa, the Bach says. So then the two examples that the Bryce is saying is the same thing. It says first the Kaimit, then the Levina, or first the Levina, then the Kaimitz. In the order of how you makta this, it doesn't matter. If both of them mean that he had the machshav of pigel first, so then why is the Bryce repeating this? But in V'oid, Hotanya, we learned in the Bryce that where it clearly says, V'achakach, where it clearly says that he brought the Levina b'shtike, and V'achakach the Kmitze. Or the other way around. First the Kaimitz b'shtike, and V'achakach the Levina. You can't say ukvar. Clearly it says in another Bryce the Lashon of Achakach. So Kashya, therefore this remains a question on Rish Lakish's opinion.
There's a lot of kashas that we're going to present.